Welcome to LifeLens TV, where we delve into the stories that matter most, exploring the truth behind the headlines. And today, we're unpacking the chilling case that has gripped the heart of Nairobi. A story that has left families shattered and an entire community in shock. Picture this. Just a few weeks ago, on October 21st, tragedy struck in Eastleigh. A suspect in a triple murder case, who has managed to evade justice until now, has finally been apprehended. This man, Mr. Hashim Dagane Muhammad, has been linked to the brutal deaths of Waris Daud, her young 12-year-old daughter Nusaiba Dahir, and Waris's niece, 23-year-old Amina Abdirashad. The brutality of these crimes has left us asking, who could have committed such an act and why? Now, this wasn't just an arrest made out of coincidence. This was the result of relentless investigative work, with officers tracing him back to the very neighborhood where the tragedy unfolded, Eastleigh, Kamukunji, right here in Nairobi. Imagine the suspense, the pressure, as he's led into the Directorate of Criminal Investigations headquarters, where he faces a barrage of questioning. The authorities are determined to get to the truth, but here's where things get even more intriguing. Behind the scenes, officers have revealed that Mr. Hashim Dagane Muhammad may not even be in Kenya legally. Yes, you heard that right. There are serious concerns about his legal status in the country, raising the question, who exactly is this man, and how has he managed to slip through the system undetected? Now let's peel back another layer of this complex story, Mr. Muhammad's criminal history. You might think this is just a man gone astray, but the truth is far darker. Here's the twist. Mr. Muhammad isn't just any suspect. He's a former police officer, originally from Ethiopia. While serving there, he was actually jailed for murder, a shocking revelation that leads us to wonder about his violent past. Why was he released? And how did he make his way to Nairobi, slipping so easily into a new life? After his release from prison, Mr. Muhammad moved to Nairobi, where he's been working as a taxi driver. But there's something suspicious here too. At the time of the alleged crime, he was driving with an expired interim driving license. And this is where it gets even more concerning. Detectives at the DCI have launched an investigation into how this man obtained a Kenyan ID. Think about it. Someone with his background and record shouldn't have been able to navigate through the system so easily. The fact that he holds a Kenyan ID raises serious questions about potential loopholes in our identification processes. Who was helping him? And why wasn't he under any kind of surveillance? On October 21st, 2024, just hours before the horrific murders, Mr. Muhammad was captured on CCTV driving a Nissan Note registration number KDQ718Y. According to the DCI, this very car was recorded picking up the two young victims from their Eastleigh home, the last time they would ever be seen alive. Even more unsettling, when detectives pulled records from the National Transport and Safety Authority, they discovered that Mr. Muhammad's interim driving license, issued back in February 2024, had already expired by the time of the alleged crime. So not only was he operating under a questionable identity, but he was also driving illegally. These details bring up chilling questions about how someone with such a dark past could move so freely among us. What drove him to this point? And how did he manage to hide in plain sight, slipping through layers of our systems undetected? Just a week ago, a man was apprehended in Nairobi, Somalia, in a case of mistaken identity. Now, imagine the fear and tension surrounding this case. A man is seated outside a salon, simply waiting for his wife, and suddenly he's arrested, accused of being the suspect in one of the most shocking murder cases in recent times. Security agencies were convinced he was Mr. Muhammad, the man we now know as the prime suspect. The tension was high, the stakes even higher. But as it turns out, this man was innocent. Fortunately, he was able to prove his identity. His documents were checked thoroughly, and after verification, he was released. And here's where the story gets even more interesting. After this harrowing experience, he and his wife made their way from Nairobi to Garissa County in Kenya, where he went public, releasing a video to clear his name. He wanted the world to know he had nothing to do with this horrifying crime. Meanwhile, the investigation continued, and what it uncovered was a chilling discovery that none of us could have anticipated. The bodies of the three victims, each one left at a separate location, as if discarded without a trace of humanity. Picture this. Ms. Daud's body was found in the Kiumbi area of Machakos County. Her young daughter, Nusiba, was found near Bahati Primary School in Kamukunji, and the third victim, Amina Abdirashad, was discovered along Mwambo Road in Parklands area. 3 lives brutally ended and their bodies spread across multiple locations, a disturbing pattern that hints at something even darker. As investigators piece together the final hours of these victims, questions arise. Why were they taken to these locations? Was it to throw off investigators? Or is there something more sinister behind these scattered scenes? And if this was part of a larger crime spree, then what else could be lurking beneath the surface? Listen closely to this. On the very day those 3 women lost their lives, another woman was almost added to the list of victims. But unlike the others, she managed to make a desperate call, a call that may have saved her life. She reached out to her family, informing them that her life was in imminent danger. Her family, in a moment of panic, sent a staggering 1 million shillings to an Ethiopian account, and only then was she released. The terror, the desperation of that moment. It's chilling to even imagine. Now detectives believe that Mr. Muhammad may have been on a cold-hearted money-collecting spree, targeting individuals and using their lives as leverage to demand ransom from their families. He's alleged to have forced his abductees to plead with their loved ones for money, threatening them with unimaginable consequences. It's a horrifying tactic, one that has shaken everyone who's heard this story. But there's more. As the detectives unraveled this case, they recovered a key piece of evidence: a vehicle. The very car that detectives say was used by Mr. Muhammad on the day of these brutal murders. And how did they find it? Through painstaking analysis of CCTV footage from multiple locations, Parklands, Eastleigh and beyond. The registration number was finally recognized, and the vehicle was traced and recovered, further tightening the net around this terrifying case. On that fateful day, these innocent women were held against their will in Eastleigh, trapped in a room where fear must have filled the air. They were kept alongside the woman who later escaped after her family raised the ransom money. And then the murders began. It's believed that Nusiba, the youngest, was the first to be taken. Her body dumped opposite Bahati Primary School in Kamukunji. From there they went to Parklands, where they abandoned Amina Abdirashad's body, then onto South Sea, where they mutilated Ms. Daud's body, her hands chopped off before being left in Kiumbi, Machakos County. And after all of this, the vehicle was coldly abandoned near Wakulima Market in Kamukunji, a final move to cover their tracks. But as chilling as this crime spree is, there's one final piece of the puzzle that investigators are turning to: the autopsy report. Could it reveal something even more sinister? Were there signs of torture or any clues that might explain the killer's twisted motives? We are going to look at the autopsy findings, the last details that tell us what these 3 victims endured in their final moments. Dr. Johansen Oduor, the government pathologist, conducted a post-mortem on the bodies of Nusiba, Abdirashad, and Ms. Daud. What he uncovered paints a picture of unimaginable horror. Let's start with young Nusiba. Dr. Oduor shared that this innocent 12-year-old died from smothering. Her airway was blocked, leaving her unable to breathe. They also suspect that she may have been sexually assaulted, and samples have been taken for further testing. Just pause for a moment to think of her last moments. The fear, the confusion. Then there's Abdirashad, who suffered multiple stab wounds, with one fatal stab reaching her heart. This young woman's life ended in extreme violence, and the pain she endured is almost too much to bear. And finally, Ms. Daud. Dr. Oduor's report on her injuries is perhaps the most chilling. Her hands were chopped off, she had severe injuries to her neck, and she had been tortured before her death. She was a mother, a caregiver. Imagine the horror she went through in those final moments. The family held a funeral for them at Langata Cemetery, where they were laid to rest. At LifeLens TV, we are committed to telling these stories so that these victims are not forgotten, and we're not done. We'll continue to follow up on any developments in this case, seeking justice and the truth. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to subscribe to LifeLens TV, like this video, and share it with others. Let's make sure the world knows their story, and why justice matters. Thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye, and inshallah, may we meet again in peace.